that have these concerns but can't be here. So we who are speaking today are speaking for much and many more. And lastly, I do appreciate you coming here. I think you're getting on top of it, but you're not getting it quick enough. We all know that this didn't happen overnight. I've written letters to commissioners long before you guys, and as soon as they saw my name, they went in the trash can. So, I mean, I've tried to tell people the goose is going to die. The poop will be here, but the goose with the golden egg is going to die. So don't kill the goose. Get the goose healthy, that we can all continue on with what we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ted Russell,
Okay, there's not a whole lot new to say. I would say there was a little bit of good news. 10, 15 years ago, these gentlemen would not have been here. I'm not sure they knew where Deep Creek Lake was 10 or 15 years ago. So at least they're here, they're thinking about it. Part of the problem is they're thinking about it and studying and not doing a whole lot. Someone mentioned about the Lake Management Office. They don't manage the lake, they manage the buffer strip. We need somebody to manage the lake and the watershed. The erosion, the erosion on the shoreline, this lady just mentioned it. We pay hundreds of dollars to get the DNR to say we can do something to save their land.
That's right.
And the tree, I've got a big tree down. I'm gonna have to pay the DNR 50 or 100 bucks so they can tell me I can chop it up and haul it away at my expense. It's their tree. I don't expect them to pay for it, but I think they ought to let me do it with not charging. A friend of mine went up to Lake Chautauqua to take his Flying Scot. Took him half an hour to get through the weed, and that's a big lake. And there were machines out there chopping it up. Of course, when you chop it up, you spread it. I'd like to second the thing about the milfoil weevils. And where do we get the money? Well, all of us here know that 2/3 and probably 80 or 90% of the people in Garrett County drain to the west. So we ought to get that flush tax back here in Garrett County, and that would sure pay for a lot of work that needs to be done. Thank you very much.
My name is Judy Fang. I have spoken at last year's meeting. I wasn't sure what I wanted to say, but I really think that if the state of Maryland and the Maryland DNR cannot find a way to properly manage this lake and make the investment in it and stop using it as a cash cow, they should find a way to turn it over to us and let us own it and manage it. One of the reasons that there are a lot of people that have second homes up here who we've made meeting after meeting that they cannot attend, the reason they can afford a second home is either they've successfully managed to build a business or they've managed to be paid a lot of money to successfully manage somebody else's business. To sit in these meetings and be treated like the village idiot is beyond infuriating. To go to a local fundraiser and listen to everybody else referring to the DNR as the local Nazis, or they are referred to as the DNR Nazis, is disgusting. This lake has been so poorly managed. I have offered to take Bruce Michaels out on my boat when we discovered the horror of the Eurasian water milfoil. The same invitations have been made to all of you. The commissioners have gone out. Don Sinsel has gone out. The science that's being conducted is bad, plain bad. If you know anything about science or protocols, it's a joke. There has not been one of you that has been willing to go out and make an empirical eyeballing of the actual problems on the lake. Looking at Eurasian water milfoil with divers who go out after the die-off of that particular grass is such a waste of money. We're tired of paying to keep your scientific staff studying the bay with our tax money and not getting anything in return. The time has come to either, as they say,
We're off the
you know what, but unfortunately, every time we do it, we go to support the bay and not ourselves. So, please.
That's it, the secretary would like to conclude the meeting.
When you do this, I learned you hold the mic like a roll of toilet paper. I, again, appreciate everyone coming. I think what we're going to do as best as we could with notes we took from people's testimony is do a more thorough piece of commentary back to all of you, because in the little bit of time I have, it's going to be very hard to respond to every issue that's been raised here, so we'll do that. We were talking to commissioners earlier about this. The reason that we do this session in November, which I admit is when a lot of people are not at the lake, that wasn't by design, it's just that's when we finish up most of our yearly monitoring, so we come up here. But I think what we talked about earlier, and I think what we'll do is perhaps come up and do updates perhaps in July when most people are here, have another meeting in an appropriate location. In this particular case, by next July, a lot of some of the additional work will be completed, so we'll have more to share. And so perhaps we'll do, a late fall meeting and then one in July when most lake property owners and vacationers are here, so everybody can not only give us feedback, but also we can reach a larger audience. I guess I'd like to offer a few general comments. You've heard the phrase, I'm sure everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. I understand, as I've gotten into this again, that there are some unique issues with people who own properties in the codes. And we are trying our best to work through those, whether it's lake grasses, whether it's sedimentation buildup, whether it's lake levels that particularly impact people in codes. To turn around and say that those issues are pervasive throughout the lake is a fact that simply is not true. Because most of the lake, with all due respect to those who think we don't have good scientists, we don't do proper methodology, for example, we did the survey of bay grass, or lake grasses, including Eurasian milfoil, in early July. So it wasn't after all the lake grasses had died off.
Before they
all lakes change. This is not the same lake that it was, as many of you described it in glowing and emotional terms years and years ago. Everything in nature is constantly changing, including Deep Creek Lake. We are still relatively in a very good position in terms of the overall water quality of the lake. And you don't have to be a PhD to understand what's happened over time in the watershed. Look around you, look at the lake. To correct a few comments that were made about my discussion with the editor of your local newspaper, The Republican, I did not say, and I just reread the editorial based on a conversation you had with me, that the department or the state or the governor was writing off areas of the lake. That's a sort of hyperbole that becomes tiresome, very tiresome. What I said was, in response to a question, We have a dedicated fund, the Waterway Improvement Fund. It's funded by the sales tax on boat sales in the state. Because of the recession, our revenues are down about 50%. That's just a fact. I mean, I'm not making it up, that's a fact. People who buy boats tend to purchase them, particularly the larger ones, by taking out second mortgages on their homes. You remember when the recession started back in 2008, I think, you remember, that lending dried up, second mortgages dried up substantially. They're starting to come back, but the boat industry in Maryland has not really bounced back significantly, so our revenues are way down. And those are the revenues that we use to do access to the lake, like launching ramps, to dredge, to do a number of things. And in rural areas of the state, I'm sure you all know this, but in a gross sense, because of the population base being less than the large metropolitan areas, tax revenues that go to the state, in the case of Garrett County, are less than what you get back in funding. That's not to say that you shouldn't advocate for more. That's your right as a citizen of the state to advocate for what you feel you need.
Say that again.
Any area of the state that's less popular, like your county, always gets more back in expenditures than you generate in revenues.
But do they go to the lake?
No, they don't go to the lake. They go to the general fund, with exceptions of certain tax and fee revenues that come to our department.
What about a credit for all our buy-down funds that went to the
Yeah,
general
that
revenue?
13
Well-
million, where'd it go?
Again, I'm just giving you some comments about it. I'm
You
not,
get a lot from us too.
You weren't very good stewards of that 13 million if nothing came out here.
let me continue. I'm not going to debate this issue. References have been made to, we won't dredge the coves. Now, those people who own property in the coves, I assume, realized when they purchased those lots, which were perhaps, I don't know, less in value than homes on other parts of the lake because they were in coves.
They were waterfront lakes.
Are concerned about all of this. Let me tell you, with the Waterway Improvement Fund, for all the dredging we do as a general rule, if you think about this in terms of the expenditure of public dollars to benefit the boating public, we dredge and we pay for major boating channels when we have the funding, which we don't have now. We pay for 100% for major boating channels that are used by the general boating public. We do not do that for spurs and coves throughout the bay and all its tributaries. When we have revenue, what we do is provide greatly subsidized loans to local governments who then enlist the support of people who own property along spurs or coves to pay off the cost of dredging them. That's been the policy of the state for years, because once you go beyond that and start deciding which group of property owners who are not part of who don't live on a general boating channel or benefit from it, then number one, you have far more need than you can ever possibly accommodate. And then you get into questions, well, why are you benefiting this group of property owners versus this group over there, particularly when you can't benefit them all. Pardon me?
You benefit a year late.
State owns.
Right. We also own, the state owns the waters under the Chesapeake Bay and all of its tributaries. Several people again mentioned Ocean City. We don't put $500,000 a year into a maintenance fund for periodic replenishment. We put $1 million a year. But that's matched by another $1 million by the City of Ocean City and Worcester County, the county within which it's located. So that's basically a 50-50 match. The federal government puts their share in. We are trying our best to work through these issues. I think we have had much improved conversations and cooperation with this Board of County Commissioners. I want to give them credit for that. And more things are going to start to happen as we move forward. I would only urge all of you to think about the following. As long as people up here are divided as stakeholders, we will not achieve any of the goals that we need to hammer out. As long as all of you are divided, pitting people in Friendville against lakefront property owners versus fishermen and all
It's a
that.
minute problem. There's no division
There's no
generally about whether we want the lake to survive.
I'm not talking about that, because I was up here last year, and
There's no division.
there was a lot more debate among various beneficiaries of the release of water from the lake, not as much this year. All I'm trying to say is, and it's up to all of you, but in my considerable experience in government, if you want to get things done, if you want to move the ball down the field, if you want to get, you need to have consensus. And you need to tone down the rhetoric and start working constructively with one another and with government, both here and at the county level, to see what we can develop.
Vice versa.
Pardon me?
And vice versa. You need to up your rhetoric, down your studies, and work with us.
Sense of urgency.
Right. We,
Yes.
as someone suggested, we can stop, believe me. We've been cutting our budgets every year, cutting them, not adding to them. If you don't want us to do this comprehensive monitoring program, which we thought was a good idea, when I came back to this department, just tell us and we will stop doing it. If you don't want us to do any of this work, we'll stop doing it. If you want us to turn the lake back to the county, or as someone suggested, to the property owners,
It's not right.
what do you mean it's not right? That's what you were saying.
We're saying action is better than studies. We're not saying studies are bad. We're saying a sense of urgency and some real action on the,
Right.
solving the problem.
Sir,
Enacting those.
sir,
Yes.
state government, local government in this state, revenues are way down. They're way down. Pardon me?
Well, let's talk about priority. Where are you spending all the money?
Pardon me?
Where's all the money going that you have? I mean, it's a sense of priority.
We have-
It's always priority.
since the-
It's not revenue. It's not money, it's priority.
I'm starting to argue with you and I apologize, I don't mean to do that.
All right, I keep this.
The only thing I'm trying to say is, we're trying our best to work with your local government, with your delegation in Annapolis, and listening to all of you to try to develop a consensus, because if we have a consensus over where we want to go with the lake, it's much more likely that funding will happen. As long as we are in the midst of a lot of these debates, I'm not saying healthy debate isn't good, but as long as we continue in this fashion, we're not going to get to a point where securing funding,
Well, let's just make the commitment to move forward. That's all we're asking.
Let's move forward.
And I think that was stated in recent campaign.
Well, anyway, I'm voicing my frustration, you have it. We're not potted plants in government, we also have frustration. We're doing our best. Obviously, many of you don't think we're doing enough. That's fair, that's your right as a citizen to say that and press for more action. I understand that. But I'm just urging all of you to try to come together with us and with the county government and see what we can do together. Because there is a lot of competition for funding. It's not a period of great excess revenues in state government or local government. So the more we coalesce, the better chance we have together securing funding at both levels, at all levels of government to help move the lake forward.
John, are you going to commit to a mechanism that would bring all of us together? We've been trying to do this for years. We would love to come together with you and talk about this, and the county commissioners. It would be a major breakthrough. It has been very difficult to get the DNR's ear, and with all due respect, the county commissioners' ear. With your leadership, you can put in place a watershed management mechanism which would recruit all of us stakeholders to identify a consensus area, not unanimity. We will never reach unanimity given all the divergent interests. We have a consensus. It's a red herring to suggest that the lack of complete unanimity is the problem here. It's the lack of a management mechanism.
I don't think I used the word unanimity, but I said general consensus. You're never going to get 100% of anything.
I'd just like to say one thing. Mike Lewis, I'm principal with the Department of Juvenile Services.
Hi, Mike.
And we've
Good
had, good to see you. We've had a wonderful partnership with DNR. We've gone from raising 350 fish for stocking initiatives to now over 10,000 fish in cooperation with DNR. to populate our local streams, the Savage River, every community fishing rodeo for our kids, or fish we run. So I mean, it's out there, but it's not easy. I mean, and you've got to be able to, you know, we can sit here and say one thing, but the action's in Annapolis. You know, you got to get out and develop those kind of partnerships and be able to work. And we've just had a tremendous experience, and it just continues to grow. I think the lake, I've been on the lake all my life. We've been there. But it is changing. There are things that we can do as we come together. But we have a great partner. It's a great model to follow. I admire your courage for coming out, because you had to know you were going to get 22.
I don't, that's part of my job.
Yeah.
I don't think it's part of the job of people who work with us.
Everyone in this room wants one thing. They want the lake to be good.
Right, and all I'm trying to say
And
to
we're
you
all
is there's
trying-
some localized issues,
And we're
particularly
all
in the
trying to work
codes.
together. Some of us talk out of frustration because we've been trying for so long. I don't even go to property owner meetings anymore. I'm surprised I came tonight, because it's like, what do you talk
Right.
for?
Right. Let me just sum up. A, we'll do a follow-up commenting on a number of things I didn't comment on, and we'll send it to the commissioners and send it to the PRB and the Property Owners Association and others, and we'll let it, have it posted on the website. So you can look at our response to some of the specific issues. Secondly, we'll plan on coming up here twice a year, and we'll come up next July, and we'll repeat that when most of the folks are up here recreating in the summer for the reasons I stated. And thirdly, we're going to continue to have discussions with the commissioners about how we move to a broader lake management plan that does involve stakeholders and other related issues. So I think things are just going to start to unfold at a little more rapid pace. All I'm trying to say to you on funding is that we're still trying to dig out of a hole at the state level. There's light at the end of the tunnel. We have expended more waterway improvement funds up here. Some of you know this, perhaps some of you don't, than the revenue that we've gotten that goes into the fund, as I was mentioning earlier. I'm not saying it's enough, but the proportion of what we send back here for projects is greater than what we get from Garrett County. And that's going to be true generally speaking. So that's enough. I'm sorry if I got a little frustrated, but
We're all
we're people
frustrated.
too.
That concludes. The commissioners will be here. Secretary Griffin, I know, has to leave, but the commissioners will be here if you have comments for us.
I've been in touch with people forever, they don't want to hear me. It's just a frustration. I couldn't want.
Hi. Yeah, she's on my. I know. You should have.